Okay. Next. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this session, which is called the multi-use multi-use generate efficient utilization of ocean areas. We would think that oceans are big enough for everyone, but it seems that in coastal areas in particular, there are so many activities going on, and maybe more in the future, that we need to be efficient with the use of areas. My name is Anne Husbekk. I'm the head of the Center for the Ocean and the Arctic at UiT, the Arctic University of Tromsø of Norway, and I will be the moderator in this side event. We have, of course, a little bit of technical trouble. That is because some of our presenters did not reach Tromsø today due to the weather conditions. So this will be a very challenging side event based on presentations here live, presentation live but digital, and also a video presentation. But hopefully everything will go smooth and we will go through the program as planned. We will spend 90 minutes together discussing how multi-use of ocean areas can be performed from a scientific, technological, business and legal point of view. The goal for this side event is to share knowledge, have dialogue, make collaborations and ask critical questions. We will start with presentations and leave time for questions and comments to the end of this side event. The Center for the Ocean and the Arctic have been working with multi-use of ocean for an extended period of time. And late last year, we presented a policy brief for the Minister of Fishery, Trade and Business in Oslo. And the project manager for this project at the center is Silje Elde, and she will give a brief introduction to multi-use at sea. Please, Else.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, thank you, Anna. And as mentioned, the Center for the Ocean and the Arctic have been working with this topic of multi-use for several years now. We have not done this alone. We have collaborated with a lot of these organizations you see here. And this has resulted in the policy brief that you have been provided here, and also a report. We had several roundtable. Thank you. Several roundtable discussions, and also we have hosted our very first hackathon. And all of this you can read the summaries and the reports on havarktis.no. All right. So the context of the project is an increased need for ocean areas for industry development. And DNV actually estimates a fivefold increase in area use by 2050, as you can see in this graph. This is largely due to the development of marine renewable energy. Here it's clearly offshore wind, which holds the largest share. Thus, we need sustainable solutions, solutions that are fair, that are area efficient, and many have suggested multi-use. So multi-use can be thought of as strategic clustering or the concentration of marine industries in a specific area. We have defined it as the combination of two or more industries within the same ocean area, with the condition that at least one of them includes a permanent physical installation. So it can be the matter of a wind turbine on the top of an aquaculture facility, or it might involve a mobile ocean industries, such as fisheries, fishing near fixed structures, for example, wind turbines. And another exciting example is combining two space-demanding industries, for example, offshore wind and seaweed production. And the goal is to reduce the infrastructure costs for both industries. And a final example, which I personally find very interesting, involves the development of sea-based fuel stations, combining marine renewable energy with hydrogen production, and thus eliminating the need for ships to return to land for refueling. But why is multi-use at sea interesting to explore? And in essence, it boils down to area efficiency, circular economy, reducing costs, and potential synergies. Area efficiency could help mitigate conflicts over space and free up more areas for other important purposes, such as fisheries and marine conservation. And multi-use also fosters a circular economy where waste and surplus energy are repurposed for use in various other activities within the site. And also the sharing of infrastructure and services such as maintenance, surveillance, operation can reduce the costs and also have the potential of economies of scale. And last but not least, it can trigger collaboration or trigger innovation through collaboration. All right, so you might be wondering which multi-use sites can I visit during my next summer break in Europe? Or maybe not, maybe it's just me. But I'm sad to say that most multi-use sites are still in an early phase of pilot testing. The European Union have founded many projects on marine multi-use, one of them being Ulamur, which we're going to learn more about later today. But also the United project, which recently announced that they have achieved a significant milestone in combining seaweed cultivation with offshore wind. Right. So now we talked a lot about the possibilities and benefits of multi-use, but there are, of course, challenges because the development of a multi-use site at sea have to overcome many barriers, which are economic, social, technical, environmental, and legal in nature. And one example is higher risks under extreme weather conditions, such as we have here in Tromsø today. And another is the trouble getting investors because of the increased risks, but also because of the lack of business models for marine multi-use. And another challenge is knowledge gaps. For example, we don't really know the effects of combining two or more marine industries, the effects on each other, but also the effects on nature. But despite the risks, I believe it's important to focus on the possibilities and the benefits of multi-use, because the concentration of human activity within a specific area has proved itself to be successful on land. So I think it's important to explore the concept at sea as well. And with that, I want to thank you for the attention.
So thank you, Silje, for this interesting introduction. And now we will dive into more details related to both the scientific part of it, the technology, business, and legal issues. And first out is a presenter that will be online. That is senior scientist Øyvind Berg from the Institute of Marine Research. He's the head scientist of the project that Silje mentioned called Ulamur, and that means Offshore Low-Trophic Aquaculture in Multi-Use Scenario Realization, a very complicated acronym to spell out. But Ulamur is a very exciting project and has already 3 pilot sites for multi-use at sea. So please, Øyvind, I hope you are there. There you are. So please, the scene is yours, and start the presentation. It's very nice that you could be digitally present. We thought this morning that we would not have no presentation, and this is a good project to present, so I'm very happy that you are with us digitally. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And furthermore, do you see my screen? In that case, I go on. Thanks for your introduction. My name is Øyvind Berg. I'm a senior scientist at the Norwegian Institute of Marine Research, and I'm coordinating the Ulamur project on behalf of the European Union. Ulamur is a project focusing on seaweed cultivation, but much more. These pictures are actually not from the Ulamur. They are from close, not so far from where you are. They are from my colleague in the Porsangerfjord, Hans Christian Strand, cultivating algae, not primarily for biomass production, although he could have done that. It's done for restoration. But as a microbial ecologist, I love to see that there are much more than seaweeds here. There are also these tiny little juveniles coming up. So by cultivating seaweed, you are also improving the overall ecosystem, in this case for restoration, or you might improve a larger water body. The Porsangerfjord, of course, had to restore its seaweed forests, but the larger marine forests like the Baltic, the overall ecosystem has severe damages. No, in the Ulamur, we take advantage of the wind industry, which are partners in the project, but we don't only focus on the windmills, we also cultivate seaweed underneath the wind turbines and blue mussels. Blue mussels are very interesting organisms, and these together can also coexist very well with fish, as in this case, rainbow trout in
Øyvind,
Estonia.
we are not seeing your
Yeah.
screen. So either I have to change slides, and then you can say next slide, please, or you have to.
I think, yeah, no, let's see if I do this. Host disabled screen sharing, sier de.
Oh,
Så
host
det
must.
er dere som har gjort det. Oppsann. Kan du
Yeah.
sette opp
So
sliden min?
no. So you have to tell me, Øyvind, next slide, and I'll
Exactly.
change for you.
Det kan du gjøre. Du kan bla videre til sånn cirka noen slide, tenker jeg. Det er ikke så verst. Vi kan stoppe der, og så starter du på, bare trykk på at du kjører videre der. For du er på screens, du er på sånn presentasjonsmål, sant?
Ja, vi ser deg godt nå.
Marine multi-use can contribute to energy security and food security, but also to sea restoration and to CO2 capture. So you see, you don't only produce biomass with seaweeds and blue mussels, you also take care of nutrients such as nitrates and as phosphates and even CO2. So you change the overall ecosystem, and especially, next slide please, especially in the Baltic, that's a very important thing. No, in Ulamur we have 3 major pilot demonstration sites. The Estonian site has come the farthest way. It's a multi-use between rainbow trout and blue mussels and seaweeds. In the Baltic we cultivate ulva because the low salinity there does not allow for production of kelp. Whereas in Denmark, we work at the place called Krigerslak, which is the place essentially where the Swedish, German, and Danish zone meets. Out there, we have now established the seaweed cultivation, and we will establish the blue mussel cultivation from early this year. And in Germany, we have a site close to the island of Helgoland, where we are not operational. Next slide, please. We're not operational for the cultivation yet, but we will produce blue mussels by several means, such as this. Next one, please. So by multi-use of ocean space, we can improve the spatial efficiency, we can share the things such as data management and infrastructure, and also reduce the conflicts between different industries. For instance, there is a competition for ocean area. This competition is much greater in the countries with small sectors, such as, for instance, Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, or the Baltic states, but also Norwegians can utilize this. Next slide, please. So the Danish site, which is at the Krigerflak, is no operation. This is still the largest offshore wind farm in Europe. It will soon be replaced by some coming up elsewhere in the Netherlands and also in Danish sector, but it's still a very large wind farm. Out here we have quite shallow. These are quite shallow areas, and for a Norwegian audience, it might be important to say that our wind farms here are demersal wind farms. We don't have floating windmills in the Ulamur project. That has to be added by Norwegian projects, I think. Next one, please. Go on, please. The harvesting potential, I shall not go into detail that, but we know very well the harvesting potential here. The conclusion is we can produce large amounts of both sugar kelp and blue mussels in our waters, especially blue mussels in the west side of the Jutland, but also in the Baltic areas here. This is a paper published recently by Marie Mar et al. Next slide, please. So we have a series of policy linkages. As the introduction mentioned, EU has had a series of multi-use projects, and it's quite heavy political processes behind this, mostly because we need energy security, but we also need food security, and we need to take better care of our marine areas. Thank you. Next one. So the horizon call that we are working on is a lighthouse in the Baltic and North Sea basin. So the Olamur is focused very much on the Baltic and North Sea area. We have almost all our partners in these countries, where Norway actually is the northernmost. Next one, please. So here you have more of the policy behind it. I will especially highlight the Mission Ocean Charter, which we have signed as a consortium. It's quite heavily anchored in the European Commission. Next one, please. Why are we Norwegians so focused on the Baltic? Because we have really strong interests here. And the reason is known to many of us. Out of the Baltic comes a current, the Norwegian coastal current, actually, or you might say the Scandinavian coastal current. On the west side of Scandinavia, all along the Norwegian coast, we can follow the outlet from the Baltic all the way into the Russian zone and even into the White Sea. So the outlet of the Baltic dominates our waters in a fascinating degree. And this over-fertilized area, which the Baltic is, we have to manipulate to make it in a better condition. Next one, please. We have done several modeling on the utilization of Norwegian waters for salmon farming and for other types of aquaculture. For instance, current and temperature have been estimated to be and temperature has been estimated to be where it's possible to farm salmon, but in the Olamur we don't work with salmon. Next slide, please. Whereas offshore aquaculture is still even less mature than offshore wind industry here. We have done some interesting analysis. It is by my colleague Bjørn Odlandsvik. All the red dots you see here are virtual fish farms, which were modeled to release salmon lice from various positions along the entire Norwegian coastal zone. So the question is, will a farm outside the coast produce salmon lice, which can affect the salmon along the coast? Next slide, please. And in fact, they do. But there is a major turning point there. More than 20 kilometers, that interaction becomes smaller. But yes, there is an interaction both from the coast out to the offshore farms and from the virtual offshore farms into the coast. So there will be a salmon lice interaction here. It does contribute to the overall picture. Next slide, please. So we have modeled these. As you see from this picture to the left, you see the distance between the coast and the infection pressure on the coastal localities is there, but there is more or less a breaking point around 20 kilometers from the basic line. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the distance, sorry, it was nautical miles, not kilometers. But so the distance from the grunnlinje, the coast, the outer part of the coast, is quite critical here. We have to go outside of that if we want to reduce the challenge pressure when it comes to salmon farms. Next slide, please. We at the IMR are now turning from Olamur into another project called Marco, which we do together with DNB Veritas, where we are also focusing on marine spatial planning. But this is from IMR's basic work on demersal ecosystems in Norway. The coral reefs, as here, and the swamps, have been monitored to some extent through the Mariano project. And there is more than that. Next slide, please. So when we go into the suggested wind farm areas, As many of you will know, the Norwegian government has launched a large series of potential wind farm areas. But this is a very big area if you put it all together, much larger than the wind farm industry can even think of developing. But at this stage, it's interesting and probably very important that we try to monitor these areas. How suitable are they? That process is in the beginning. Next slide, please. So if we take this together, we can also plot the suggested areas together with especially vulnerable areas, for instance, the coral reefs and the swamp areas that I just showed, and also the spawning fields and the migration areas for juvenile fish, the areas which are essential for the fisheries. So if you look at that, you see some of the suggested wind farm areas have great overlap here, whereas some has not. And if we transfer this to what has happened on wind farming on land, we can have probably learned a lesson in a rather tough way that if we go directly to the areas which have the most wind most wind, without looking into where are the conflict highest, the results might be rather tragic. However, there are possibilities here which are more promising, that we use our knowledge about the seas to go to areas where the conflicts are smaller. However, I have to emphasize that our knowledge of the Norwegian coastal zone is not at the level which we should be satisfied with. So increasing the knowledge of the demersal areas and of the ecology of the demersal areas and of the impact of the different industries, both aquaculture and of wind farming, should be emphasized and should be this knowledge should be increasing. Next slide, please. So there are also some suggestions for offshore aquaculture showed in blue in this picture. There's even some overlap here. I'm not sure whether it's purpose, but it is a possibility even in these suggested areas to have an overlap between farming of aquaculture and wind farming. And this has also been plotted here together with spawning areas and vulnerable areas of the coastal zone. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we have this. These are, again, I have to stress that our knowledge about the vulnerable areas and spawning areas and migration areas for juveniles are to some extent preliminary. They have to be increased if we want to do this right. But for marine spatial planning, really good understanding of the ecology and of the types of nature in these areas is essential. Next slide, please. Yeah, here are the overlaps. As you see, they're outside the southern part of the Nordland County and outside Trøndelag County, where there is an overlap between the suggested areas for offshore wind and the suggested areas for aquaculture. The overlap is showed in yellow here. Next slide, please. So our areas of interest, here we have plotted, as you see the white circles here, they are the observed vulnerable biotopes. Here we have been around with ROVs to map corals, sponges, and sea plants on different areas. You might also see that there are some interesting areas outside Bergen where the overlaps are smaller. So we are quite interested in showing what that will be here. This is the Vestavin area in the Bergen, west of Bergen. You can also see the Sørlige Nordsjø 2 and Utsira Nord in this area. Next one, please. In this marker project, we have also plotted the fishing activity in the same areas. Here, Norges Fiskarlag, the National Fishermen's Association, is partner in the project. So their contributions are essential when it comes to mapping the existing fishing activities, because of course a massive development of wind farming industry means that they cannot fish between the turbines. They also have to go around the wind farm areas to go to the fishing fields. It might not necessarily reduce the quotas, but the transport will have to be changed. Next one, please. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same area here, also including the British sector. Next one, please. And of course, another offshore industry which is of prime importance is shipping. Shipping lanes is a crucial activity at sea, and in the Ulamur project it's quite straightforward. Right between the Kriegers Flak wind farm in Denmark is a shipping lane. It's actually the shipping lane out of the Baltic. It's one of the major waterways in Europe and the world. So the shipping activities put up certain limitations of our planned new industries in the marine waters. Next one, please. A general advice on offshore wind and aquaculture. This is actually taking several reports from IMR into one single slide. At this stage, protect spawning areas. Define and protect specially vulnerable areas, such as coral reefs, swamps, or representative areas. Protection of nature and our obligation to protect 30% of nature is vital here. And the possible overlap areas are especially interesting because here we can also have multiple use concepts, such as aquaculture and wind farming together. Next one, please. So the Ulamur project has now been operational for 1 year. It will go until 2026, whereas the Marco project also will end in the early 2026. You're more than welcome to take contact with us at ulamur@hi.no. And of course, as in all European projects, we are very open with what we are finding, and we publish everything with open access. And also, I would especially emphasize that we are now reaching out to 5 new countries, which are invited to apply for extra project sub-project as a part of the Ulamur project. That was launched today, and that's one of the great events in the Ulamur life history so far. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Øyvind. I think you have presented the Ulamur and the Marco project in a very good way, and we understand all of us how complicated and complex both the planning and also the business model of these marine multi-use places are. So we really appreciate that you could contribute and give us the understanding, and if you are with us to the end of the session, we will also have time for questions and comments. So thank you so much so long. So now I try to turn to the next slide. Okay. Yeah. So we will move to development of technology and business models for multi-use of ocean areas. And the presenters in the program is not here due to the weather, but we have last minute been able to have 2 very, very good substitutes from the same institutions. Norway has for a long period of time developed both oil and gas industry with very high technological efforts, and also subsea installations that may be of interest also when it comes to marine business parks. So today we will have 2 presentations, one from project manager Ørjan Birkeland from offshore wind in Equinor, and the other from project planner Gustav Westli from Aker Solutions, working with aquaculture technical solutions. So I give the floor to both of them, and they present as was planned by the original presenters. Thank you.
Yes, it will be exactly like the original presenters. So we will actually try to make a joint effort. I will start with giving some, hopefully giving you some insight into offshore wind. So it's not Øystein Johansen standing here. It's he's my colleague. Called me this morning. My name is Ørjan Birkeland, as said, and I work at the Equinor's office in Harstad, which is just south of here. This figure shows excuse me, how much time do we actually got? Is it 20 minutes or is it 50? Okay, thank you. This figure actually shows the potential for wind, offshore wind in Norway. The Hywind Tampen is actually existing. The Southern North Sea 2 and Utsira Nord is projects that will be developed, currently undergoing a concession process. But the potential is really very large and much higher. And it's situated all along the coast, as also shown by the previous presenter. For us, it's important to have continuity in these projects to start off and look at the potential all along all the coast. That's also beneficial for if it blows in the north as it does today. It's maybe quiet in the south, and also the North Sea have much the same wind conditions as you have onshore in Europe, in Denmark and Germany. So if you have wind farms along the coast, you will be more secure for a constant supply of energy in total. So this just a few words about the concepts. This is actually a sketch of how this Southern North Sea could look like. In this case, you will have bottom fixed installations. The water depth in this case is around 60 meters. With a lot of arrays, cabling and such between the turbines. You will have an offshore substation, a high voltage DC station that exports the current to shore, where it's transformed before it goes out onto the national grid. So there will be a lot of infrastructure here on the sea floor. I also like to focus on this operational base because both during the construction and also during the operations, we will need continuous maintenance of these wind farms. So there is a potential for good synergies cooperating on the logistics. I will not use much time on this one. It just shows the different type of concepts you have in the deep water. Here it's illustrated with two type of floating installations where you have also cables or anchor cables to the seafloor. Then you have the jacket solution, as I showed on the previous slide, and also land-based. So it's when it comes to most of these areas shown on the previous map, it is actually floating wind that is the concept due to the water depths. So the last slide I would like to show before I give the word to Gustav is this sketch that gives an impression of the size of this. There's a number of turbines in these concepts, and they are all similar or identical types. And the point I would like to make here is that when we produce them, it's a kind of a serial production. So it's important to have a logistic chain and a production chain that is uninterrupted, that it's efficient. It is a low margin business, so we don't. It's a risk to these projects if there are any hiccups and delays due to disturbances in the value chain. So that also implies that for these marine business parks, when you look at things in combination, it's important to be part of the early phase of the planning, so that you're planning it very carefully to avoid hiccups. We'll probably come back to that as well in the end. The last comment I would like to make here, because I think it's shown by this, these cables, installations you have on the seafloor, that makes it complicated for fishing in these areas. Trawling is not possible, but it can be possible with other types of fishing gear. And there are actually some pilot project now on Hive in Scotland, where fishermen are fishing in between the turbines to test out how that could work out in practical terms. So then, Gustav.
Yes.
We'll change place.
Thank you, Ørjan. And I don't know if you have noticed, but there's a difference between me and Ørjan. He has much more experience than me, but I will do my very best to give you guys some technical feasibility insight from Aker Solutions' perspective on these concept marine business parks. So my name is Gustav Westli. I'm a project planner at AXO, and I'm also educated as a marine technologist. And I just really have to have some help from my side notes here. I hope you don't mind. Oh. Yes, food transition. As Ørjan mentioned, energy transition is very important. But did you know that about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions are related to food production? Also, there is a growing population that will need more food in the future. To reach our climate targets, we need to also do something about the way we produce food. Farmed salmon has the lowest carbon footprint of all farmed animals, animal proteins, and a shift towards eating more fish could be a huge benefit in reducing the climate gases. So here you see some statistics comparing the different protein sources that humans mainly consume. I know there's other ones these days, insects and such. I don't know about those, but yeah. Supply limitations with conventional farming. Conventional farming, there is currently a strong growth in demand for the farmed salmon, but the industry has are not able to grow as much on the supply side as they are asked of. The picture shows the current fish farming locations in Norway. And as we have seen in the media lately, the industry is facing some challenges that create these supply limitations. That could be such as sea lice and high mortality rates, mainly due to treatment for sea lice, and also the environmental impact in the fjords. And it's hard to get new concessions and new locations. Thank you. Offshore production technology opens new areas. To meet the growth in demand, the gap must be filled with new technologies. That's why one of the promising new technologies is offshore or semi-offshore fish farming. This is the area the wild adult salmon lives in and grows in. It is just passing the fjords on its way to and from the rivers. Here we expect a better fish health that results in lower mortality rates. There is a very good water quality and water exchange out offshore compared to inland. And it's not the same water transferred back and forth with the tide as you can see in the fjords. And longer distance to other fish farms, when you have them located offshore, could improve biosecurity, as it's been mentioned in the previous presentation, and less spread of disease and sea lice. So here we see a picture of one of OXO's products, a fish farm cage, offshore fish farm cage. And what is an offshore fish farm? As many of you are highly intelligent people and interested in this topic, I expect you to have some background knowledge. But it is, as you see, it's a massive fish cage. It is a net barrier to keep the fish in place. It is a floater structure to support the net. The floater structure is moored to the seabed, moored and anchored. And there are feeding systems and other technology that are implemented to surveil the production. And there are marine and utility systems to operate the fish farm. We have systems to get the fish in and out of the farm. We may have a living quarter located offshore, similar to an oil and gas installation. And we need power to operate. We need telecommunication to monitor the cage, and we need systems to transfer supplies and personnel. Currently, there are 3 areas that are proposed to be open for offshore aquaculture, and a 4th area north of Tromsø to be considered. The picture shows Trænebanken, west of Nordland. As we can see, the area is in the same type of environment as offshore oil and gas. We also see there is a significant distance from shore. That means we cannot use mobile phones and normal radio communication. We will need satellite communication or fiber optic cables. The area is large, and there may be 2 to 3 operators that could be in the area. The fish farms would typically be oriented based on current conditions to create buffer zones between the groups of cage, also underlay this biosecurity. And the cages in the group would be spaced somewhat apart, limited effect of spread of disease and sea lice. And this could be up to 5 to 6 kilometers apart. And it was very interesting, this input. He said it would reduce if it was 20 kilometers apart, and this is something that the industry should definitely look into further. And here we have some technical, interesting stuff that we're gonna jump a little bit. So what is typical for an installation and operation of such technology? You need to produce it and install it. We are thinking about, okay, synergies here to first see what is required for this fish cage. You need marine operation. Operations is a big one. You need to transport it out offshore. You need anchors, mooring, as I was touching upon earlier, telecommunication, electricity. And you also need supply of raw materials and feed for the farmed salmon weekly, and also daily or weekly transport of personnel. Thank you.
Okay, then we go back to this, don't we? Yeah. So to try to approaching the end. So and I think some of this was mentioned by Silje and also the previous presenter. Why coexistence, and what are the potential we see in this? First of all, innovation. When 2 industries are put together, or 2 activities are put together like this, we need innovative solutions to make things function, to have a common use of cables, electricity, logistics, and that type of things that we need to find new solutions. On the coexistence side, area is of course an issue. It will be beneficial if we can use as little areas as possible. Each of these wind farms are placed approximately 1.5 kilometers apart, so they demand a lot of acreage. So if you can combine it with other activity, then it's you will be more area efficient. Synergies. There can be many synergies, mainly on the logistics part, where you have common logistic supply and those type of things. Also anchoring points. These floating wind farms, they will need anchoring points, which also the fish farms will need.
And no, det var den første. Nice. And as you see on this slide, this area is proposed for offshore fish farming, and it's overlapping or adjacent to areas proposed for offshore wind production. As many of the areas are sustainable for both offshore wind and aquaculture due to water depths, wind location, regulation, complex scenarios. We should look at coexistence between these industries and the synergies and challenges by such coexistence.
Yeah, so I think some of these points have already been mentioned, but it is the better to use the ocean space in a better way to have a more efficient use of the acreage. It says there are the areas closed for other interests, fisheries, for example. That may be the case now, but as I also said in my introduction or first part of the presentation, that there are pilot projects with fishermen to see if it is possible to fish also in between the turbines. The coexistence benefits has been addressed already. That we are collaborating on logistics and transport, and also on emergency preparedness is a clear benefit.
Yes, and the future governmental requirements that coexistence and better utilization of ocean space is to be assumed a future criteria for award of licenses, areas, and concessions. It should be beneficial to have a balance, as mentioned, with areas, and you're kind of taking into account a wider perspective than maybe traditional methods have been used before. And regarding challenges, you have challenges proposed by simultaneous operations. It will definitely have an increased complexity, and this initiation planning and front-end planning, working as a project planner, there is definitely an increased complexity here that we need to address. And for not to mention regulatory foundation for this to be feasible legally. Yes, and I am extremely interested and engaged in technology. I find it super interesting, and I hope that this gave some technical feasibility insights. And like part of the projects that I'm on these days are a new subsea collector system to make the grid more efficient. That we looked at could be used for both offshore cage and windmills, with the wet-made connectors connecting windmills and cages underwater. Very efficient, cost reduction, and innovative, you know, driving this industry forward. Yeah, okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you to Gustav and Ørjan. We leave questions to the end of the session, so we'll look into one of the challenges that you already addressed, and that is the legal area, the area of regulation. And of course, we have two brilliant presenters, one living on Kvaløya, that is the nearest island outside Tromsø. He was not able to get here because of the wind, but he will be presenting online in real time, and then we will have a video presentation. Yeah, and his name is Tore Henriksen. He's the Dean of the Law Faculty at UiT, the Arctic University of Norway. And the other presenter is Professor Sigrid Eskeland-Schytz from University of Bergen. So we start with Tore Henriksen. I hope he's online now. Please, Tore, we can see you.
Yeah, good afternoon. And my apologies for not coming into downtown. And you have my slides, I guess. So the purpose of the presentation by Sigrid Eskeland and me is not to give you complete answers to all the questions, the challenges with multi-use of ocean space, more raise questions of whether the present legal regime is adequate, and perhaps make it part of a more extensive debate on how we manage or not manage ocean space. And also, I think that builds on a mindset that still exists somewhere by some, that the ocean is non-exhaustible, but experience is somewhat different, as we have heard. So my role in this presentation is to provide a more broader picture, whereas Sigrid will give a more detailed discussion. You can change the picture. Here it is just an overview of the different uses of the ocean. Some are not area specific, like fishing and shipping. Others are more space dependent. And then we also have marine protected areas, which also is one type of uses of oceans, or non-uses of the ocean. Just to illustrate the background. You can shift. Yeah, and uses of oceans may overlap in time and even conflict, even if the different uses are legitimate in themselves. And I'm coming from an international big legal background, and there they are different types of regulating potential conflicts and or prevent conflicts. It's through due regard obligations. For instance, in Norwegian waters, international vessels are entitled to navigate through waters, and then you have to find balancing between possible conflicts, for instance, between international navigational routes and fishing, and also by establishing of safety zones around, for instance, installations, petroleum installations that Norway can do, applying international organizations' rules. But we also see that there has been developments in international law towards more holistic, integrated approach to the management of oceans. We know concepts like ecosystem approach and principle of integration. And this means that a more critical view of how you use ocean, and particularly ocean space. And the nature agreement made in Montreal last year, states agreed to protect around 30% of ocean space. And Norway is probably one of the countries that need to do most about that. And we also see that in other countries, like in the European Union, also they see look into how to organize, to plan the use of ocean space through laws on maritime spatial planning. You can change, yeah. And here is the Norwegian legal framework. Within 1 nautical miles of the baselines, the Plan and Building Act is applicable, where the local councils are responsible for planning through spatial planning. So there they can plan how the different uses of the oceans are to be used, and also provide possible for coexisting of activities. But beyond 1 nautical miles in the territorial sea, the exclusive economic zone, and on our continental shelf, there is no such spatial planning legislation. It's the government that is responsible for planning of the use of ocean space and regulating and activities under Norwegian jurisdiction. And the use of space is regulated through different types of sectorial legislation under different ministries, like the Ministry of Trade, Fisheries and Business, like the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Environment and Climate, and the Ministry of Defense. So there are different ministries. And here I really wanted the presentation of Sigrid to come in, because she illustrates really the challenges of each of the different sectoral legislations, how they, to a less degree, provides for this multi-use. It's within each of the legislation that is a possibility of coordinating. But after my presentation, Sigrid will tell us more about this. So we can go on to next slide. Yeah, so looking into marine parks and the use of ocean space, I think when you, based on also Sigrid findings, and what we heard earlier, it's an increasing need for more effective use of ocean space, for instance, through co-location of marine activities. And of course, my perspective is more of an environmental perspective, that the uses of oceans should be more concentrated. As you will hear Sigrid's presentation, that the Norwegian legislation as it is does not provide for sufficient incentives for co-location. So the question is, what kind of legal framework do we need to promote more multi-use of ocean space? What do we need to supplement existing sectorial legislation? And here there are some political instruments that are coming up. I know there is work on marine business plans. It's based on the policy of the government to provide for comprehensive development of new and existing businesses by conducting an involvement interest to ensure systematic and predictable use of the ocean. So there's a policy plan coming up that can provide for better coordination and co-location of human activities. I haven't seen the plan, it's not presented yet, but I've seen the comments by business and NGOs on it, and many of them are concerned that there is not adequate coordination with the integrated management plans, which maps particularly sensitive areas, map different uses of the ocean, etc. And of course, these are political instruments, and there is a concern that they don't necessarily provide enough knowledge and legitimacy for balancing different competing interests. For instance, establishing marine business parks in the nearby special valuable and vulnerable areas. And we also know that there is a work in the Ministry of Environment on an environmental act, which will provide for legal basis for also establishing area-based management tools or marine protected areas in beyond the territorial waters. So there is a lot of activities here, political and legal, and we are concerned that they are not adequately coordinated. So I think there is a need to look into a possible Marine Spatial Act of Norway that could provide for more transparency, knowledge-based and comprehensive management of ocean space, and also what was said in the beginning, to look into what are the impacts of co-location. So with those words, I thank for this is the end of my presentation, and I would like to give the floor to Sigrid.
Good afternoon. I will present on the legal framework promoting multi-use in ocean space. Multi-use in industrialized areas can preserve other areas from installation and related pressure. This can create a win-win situation by shared infrastructure such as suction anchors, as well as shared monitoring costs and maintenance costs. Multi-use areas is not a fixed concept. We could think in terms of highly industrialized coastal areas like Hull in UK, with onshore carbon capture, offshore carbon storage, offshore wind, all in combination. This is another example of a multi-purpose offshore platform, an offshore energy island, or multi-use combining offshore wind with aquaculture, fishery, leisure, tourism, etc. Last but not least, we can think in terms of multi-use when it comes to nature-inclusive design. The wind park is designed in order to enhance ecological growth in the area. When it comes to legal framework, it is a premise from the Human Rights Convention that is worth taking into consideration. When a license to offshore wind is granted, this is a possession under Protocol 1.1. That is a property right. The right as a possession is given as the license is granted, and the right does not extend beyond what follows from the law and the terms of the license. Still, intervention in established position raise various demands under the convention, such as legal basis and a right to compensation. Thus, granting a license to offshore wind is a kind of last point of return when it comes to promoting different terms in the license. This could be a term of third-party access to the area. One problem that arises is the areas in the outskirts of the project. This is an example of the offshore wind area in the southern North Sea, 2, divided into 3 production areas. And this right area here is now being auctioned in the spring. And this area will then, after the auction, be designed for a production area, like for instance this red area. But what about the rest of the area? Who owns or has rights in this area? Well, it is stated now in the public hearing that the developer has no rights in the rest of the announcement area. And this is important in order to enhance multi-use. Another situation is where the existing operator wants to start new activity in relation to his own existing activity. This is an example for offshore wind in combination with petroleum and gas. And Hywind Tampen is now up and running. It is electricity to oil and gas production, and it is the same operator. And when this activity started, it was a revised license under the Petroleum Act. It is more problematic when new actor wants to enter into an established offshore wind area. Can the license holder of the offshore wind refuse? The Ocean Energy Act from 2010 is silent on multi-use versus exclusive use. Another later act, the Seabed Mineral Act, is not silent and has a very special provision that is worth taking into account. It is stated that a mining license under the Seabed Mineral Act does not prevent others than the right holder from being given the rights to carry out extraction of petroleum, when this does not entail unreasonable inconvenience for the mining activity. And the same applies for activity under the Ocean Energy Act. This is then, the situation here is then that if you are granted a seabed mineral extraction license, you have to accept other activity from petroleum, from ocean energy in the area. And this is stated in the law. The only exception is if it is of unreasonable inconvenience for you. And it is the ministry who decides what is unreasonable in this context. What about the Ocean Energy Act then? The Act is silent on multi-use. The system raises question about whether the license holder in principle and as a starting point has exclusive right to use the area or must tolerate shared use. According to the preparatory work, these are questions that will have to be solved in the license. So the question of exclusive rights or multiple use will have to be assessed in connection with the ministry design of the license and the license terms. So this is now decided in the license process. But what if the license is silent? Will it have to be interpreted as an exclusive right to the area, with the right to say no to other stakeholders and third parties' interests having access to the area? The preparatory work states further that reservation of offshore wind may also apply to future not yet developed or tested technologies. So with the long lifespan of the facilities of offshore wind, like 30 years, and the potential for technology development during that period, it is important that the license has this opening for new activity from different technologies. So the way forward is that we have still no licenses granted under the Offshore Energy Act for offshore wind, and whether such terms facilitating multi-use will be established in the licenses remains to be seen. We can still ask, why should we rely on license terms from case to case? Would it be better to have the reserved starting points in the Ocean Energy Act, in accordance with the text in the Seabed Mineral Extraction Act? That is, that third-party access is possible when this does not entail unreasonable inconvenience for the existing activity. In my view, this is a question worth discussing for the future in order to promote multi-use in offshore wind areas in Norway. And by that, I say thank you for your attention.
So thank you to Tore and Sigrid. It doesn't make it easier for us. We have said potential both in the multi-use, in the technology and business creation, and then the legal framework has to be fixed in order to make this happen faster. In summary, I think it is, we can say that knowledge related to marine business park is on its way, and that the Olamur project with the 3 pilots is promising. The technology is on its way, at least for some important components of marine business parks. And the legal framework is still not complete, but the challenge are at least partly illustrated. So with this, it is time for you to post questions, and the presenters will answer the best they can. Those who are online and those who are here are asked to come to the front of the auditorium, and we will see what we can do with questions and answers. And I think I will ask the first questions, and that is related to maybe what Øyvind said in his presentation of Olamur. We know from other experiments or projects in the ocean that the spawning areas of fish is not constant, not for all fish species at least. We know that with warmer water, some species move northward, and if we establish a marine business park, which is complicated, costly, and is made to last, and this is in the middle of a spawning area that we didn't plan for, how is that going to affect the planning of these marine business parks? One question. And the other one I would like to ask is, we have seen very harsh weather today, and sometimes we have polar lows in this area with a lot of icing on everything that's in the ocean, constructions in the ocean. So how do you approach this problem in your planning of technology in the north? So maybe first Øyvind answer the question about spawning areas, and then we have the technologists answering problems with polar loaves, for instance. Please, Øyvind.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding spawning areas, and also I would add migration areas, migration routes for juveniles. There are lots of these, and there are lots of unknowns here. This is the category of known unknowns. We do know some of them. And actually, in the case of the area called Sørlige Nordsjø 2, parts of the area were let out because we know what is spawning ground and migration area for juveniles, and what, to some extent, what is not. To the question whether this will change as climate change occurs, yeah, our waters are changing. We know that. The difficult part is how do they change? We know that the distribution area of species are slowly changing. We know that the areas are changing with a lot of different factors. For instance, the plankton populations, or I would say the plankton society of the Barents Sea and the North Sea have changed for quite a long time. Actually, there is more plankton of the nutrient-rich plankton coming into the Barents Sea, and that is related to the fact that it's not going to the North Sea anymore to the same degree. So there are a lot of major ecological changes going on at the same time. But I would say that very detailed mapping of the demersal areas and of the key ecosystem services is crucial for successful marine spatial planning.
To technology?
You had a question about icing on the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, how rough can the weather be without being destructional to the installations?
Yes. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to give you a deep technical answer to this, but we have a lot of experience with icing on structures in general, especially when considering installations in the Barents Sea. There are one installation producing today. There will be one later this year, and we also looked into other possibilities even further north, and where icing is a problem. And the constructions, they are made according to those conditions that you can find. The major difference between the North Sea and the Barents Sea when it comes to weather, the weather conditions is actually not much worse in the Barents Sea when it comes to winds and the wave heights. But of course there is an issue with temperature and darkness. Yes. So there are different issues, but I think the experience we've learned from other activity can also be transferred to these new installations.
Now it's your turn. Oh,
yeah, I would
please.
just love to add that personally, I believe that such challenges, especially regarding weather conditions, should be feasible to overcome. Argumentally, Norway is one of the best countries when it comes to technology offshore, so I have full faith that the industry are able to cope with such environmental impact.
Hopefully, yes. Questions from the audience? A lot of things we could ask. Yeah, maybe I'll take the microphone and yeah.
Hi, thank you for some very nice presentations, and I think this is a very interesting session. I have a question to the Olamur project as well. You are talking about multi-use with aquaculture and offshore wind, And I'm wondering if you're looking at pollution issues, if you're going to grow food in an area with other industrial activities. That is also often a question that is raised. For instance, microplastics. It's a lot of ropes out there, paint, and as far as you know, that hasn't been investigated so far. And the other thing is fallout of organic matter in combination with spill from aquaculture, feces or food spill. And we know that there are some discussions today about how large wind parks will affect the ocean circulation. And if we may have challenges related to that, if we grow all these, or if we combine all these activities together.
So I suppose Eivind can answer these questions. Big questions, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. It was interesting questions, and I'm happy to answer at least the first one, which is regarding nutritional quality and of potential pollution. That's a key part of the Olamur project that I didn't tell much about, but that's half the reason why IMR is in our Institute of Marine Research is in the project. We are in with our nutritional parts. So we will analyze plastics, microplastics. We don't expect to find any differences there and from macroalgae and blue mussels grown in other areas, but we will look for it. And the same applies to nutritional quality, because we intend to find out, is this healthy seafood that we are producing? We are producing in areas with high human impact. The Baltic has a lot of pollution, and the North Sea has the North Sea. But still, we can produce blue mussels, at least to some extent, in the Baltic, very much so in the North Sea. And we can also produce a microalgae there. But the nutritional quality is quite central. Regarding circulation, we are operating in areas with a lot of human impact, and there are a lot of installations. For instance, the Kriegers area in Denmark is not far from the Øresund with the Øresund Bridge. It's a very well monitored area. We haven't any information regarding that the presence of these wind farms does influence the water currents coming out of the Baltic and into the Baltic. Those are even the most important ones, because the inlet to the Baltic also is the inlet of new fresh seawater with fresh oxygen, etc. And the North Sea is a very rough area. Actually, one of the major technical problems is that, do our constructions hold? We do know that the wind farms hold. They are monopiles, very well demersally anchored. But the anchoring of the cultivation systems for mussels and seaweeds, well, it's exciting to see whether the thinking has been valid. So that's one of the risk parts of the project. We don't work with salmon aquaculture in this area, with one exception. Rainbow trout is a part of the Estonian case. There is no wind farm there. It's only a low trophic aquaculture and rainbow trout. And the idea is actually that the low trophic aquaculture, the kelp, will take out the nutrients. The blue mussels will take out the particles, algae and bacteria, and so you will reduce both the number of bacteria and nutrients in the area. In a way, it's multi-trophic aquaculture, this. Although we cannot show that it's the same molecules that comes out of the fish that goes into the seaweed. In terms of overall balance for the Baltic ecosystem, we can see that we remove nutrients and particles in the same order of magnitude as is released by the fish.
Thank you very much for a very good and long answer. Some more questions from the audience? I would like to ask Silje, what is the future plan for the center approaching the multi-use areas of sea?
Again? We are going to look into the legal aspects of multi-use, or what we call marine business parks in the future. So we're very much looking forward to that.
We have good collaborators in Tore Henriksen and maybe also Sigrid in the future, being very updated on what the challenges and how to solve the problems when it comes to legal aspects. So with this, Gunnar, please.
Well, just one comment to legal and political challenges. I think I would just emphasize what Tore Henriksen said in his introduction about the separation we have with the coastal regime and the ocean regime. I mean, I'm an educated land use planner, and I'm used to having Plan- og bygningsloven, Planning and Building Act, as the comprehensive act for solving all types of conflicts between industries. So there is one decision maker, well, to say it's very simply, usually the municipalities. They don't have complete self-dependence, a lot of interference with other authorities, but ultimately it is the municipality that takes the decision. As Tore said, in the ocean, it's the government, staten, as we say in Norwegian, that has the authority. But there is no comprehensive system for marine spatial planning, and that is a problem which the government apparently has understood, and they have said that they are going to address it. The way they could do, if you listen to what Espen Barth Eide said more than a year and a half ago, he talked about transferring the Plan and Building Act into the ocean. If you listen to what he said, well, he's just shifted responsibility, but he has stopped talking about that. So what the government now intends to do is to try to incorporate some measures that will guide the sectoral allocation of ocean space into the integrated ocean management plans. Bjørnar Skjæran, who used to be the Minister for Fisheries, and to say it simply, in a conference this last fall, he said that the marine industry plans, they will not allocate ocean space. He was very, very clear on that. So we must look forward to what will come in the Integrated Ocean Management Plan and what type of guidance. I'm quite excited because I doubt that the sectoral, some of them very, very mighty and powerful, that they will give away their power. And we heard in another presentation from Mette Mauritzen from IMR earlier today how the different sectoral processes are operated quite differently when it comes to participation and the use of scientific advice and how open they are for other interests than their own sector.
I think not Tore, no one else can comment at this stage. We have to talk to each other in the coffee room. I would like to thank all the presenters for, this has been a big challenge for many people, and I'm very happy that we could arrange this in a digital way, hybrid way. I think we have a lot of exciting future to look forward to, and thank you for presenting. Thank you to the audience, and most of all, I would say thank to Martin and Silje and Else and all the people in the Center for the Ocean and the Arctic for making this session, side event, I think, successful. So maybe we see each other again, presenting a well-functioning wind park in the future. Thank you.